Hello and welcome to season 2, episode 2 of the Neurodivergent podcast. I'm your host, Jannice Jones, and today I am joined by the wonderful Dr. Khurram Saadiq, who is wonderfully an AuDHD consultant neurodiversity psychiatrist. He's an international keynote speaker and has done quite a few, I think 6, wasn't it? TEDx talks, and he's also a world-renowned author in this field. So welcome, Doctor. Would you like me to call you Dr. Khurram, or how would you like me to?
Khurram will be fine. Yeah.
Khurram, wonderful, wonderful. So tell me, I mean, that's an introduction, but tell me about who you are, what you do, and whether or not you're neurodivergent as well as I am.
So I'm an AuDHD. So again, with I think it's a variable form where my autism and ADHD kind of switch, and it's a push and a pull. Uh, uh, I've been a consultant neurodevelopmental psychiatrist for a while now. I'm medical lead of adult ADHD in one of the Southeast London trusts, and I work with the Integrated Care Board, which is kind of primary care, to kind of work on the waiting list. So I lead on adult ADHD as well, and I'm a mental health and especially the neurodiversity advocate, and yep, that's what my introduction is.
So you do lots of keynotes. What types of things do you talk about,
Like,
Khurram, in your keynotes?
over the years, I have gravitated towards neurodevelopmental psychiatry and neurodiversity, and this is my specialism now. So, and as well as the compassionate and transformative leadership, because that is very important. The neurodiversity, along with thriving workplaces, is kind of my specialism, where I like to believe in giving opportunity, giving spaces where they can thrive, they can be open, they can be who they are, um, kind of adapting to their styles, adapting to their timings, adapting to their capabilities, creating an environment where there's non-hierarchy and people learn from each other and thrive.
Yeah. I mean, I clearly see I go into, like you, workplaces and do training and coaching in this space. And, clearly can see that when it's a workplace that it has psychological safety, that it's really flexible, that people really do feel seen, heard and valued, that they're able to come and bring their authentic selves, that actually everybody thrives in that organization. Illness is less, people leaving the organization is less, engagement is higher. It's just got many, many amazing benefits. But also the opposite is true. So when I go into places and actually they don't feel that psychological safety is there, they don't feel seen, heard and valued, or there's not any flexibility hardly at all. The narrative now is all about, oh, let's get everybody back into the workplace. It's just they're not thinking about what actually individuals might need. They're just making mandates, and it's really affecting people. And it makes such a massive difference, doesn't it, when you do get an organization that really understands
Absolutely.
how to support people.
Absolutely. Because we most of our lives we have lived in very toxic environments, and we have this, like, again, most of us, despite of all the sensibilities and all the nuances over there with regards to toxicity, we have thrived. But again, imagine if it was thriving workplace itself. I think people would have done wonders. I would like to quote Simon Sinek here. I don't know whether you have heard him.
Yes, I do. I love his talks.
He
Yeah.
is amazing. I think he's one of the best orators. He is one of
Yeah.
the best leadership coaches, and I think he has hit the nail on the head when he says that you keep people happy and things happen. And during one of the talks, he was talking about that he visiting a hotel, and there was a barista there, and then he asked him about his job, and he said, "Oh, I love my job." And he said, being a leadership coach and being a leadership advocate, my follow up question was, "What is it about the job that you like?" And he said, uh, "The managers here are lovely. They're genuinely lovely. They come and they support you. They ask you whether you need any help or not, and they are genuine in their feelings and in their expressions and their ethos, and that makes us do more. So we own the organization and we thrive. I enjoy doing my work here." But then he said, "I exactly do the same work in another place where managers are there nitpicking, talking about things that you have not done right, things that have been missed. There, I work below the radar. So I'm there to do the bare minimum, and I just spend my time because I need some money." But his point was the same person in two different environments performing completely differently.
Absolutely. And environment is everything, isn't it? You know, when we are in those supportive, safe environments, anyone can thrive. You know, we really can thrive. And yet if we're not in those, they massively impact us. I can't remember who the book was by, but recently I read a book and it was all talking about if you want to change anything, change the environment. That's the easiest, quickest, most effective way to change anything is change, whether that's an individual changing their own environment or an organization really looking at what the environment is that they are creating. Yep, massive, massive. Thank you. And you yourself, like I am, are AuDHD. Tell me about how that's either positively or negatively impacted you over the years. What have you been conscious of?
I think I only realized it very later that I'm an ADHD. Like a lot of us, I used to think that I am not good enough. I am something wrong with my brain. Uh, the way I'm not able to do things like everybody else does, and they do it easily. Well, I struggle with it. I read things and then it does not get registered a lot, and I have to reread and reread and reread stuff in order. But again, things that I'm interested in, it gets lodged very easily into my brain. And I remember the facts from 30 years, 40 years, 50 years ago, which were fun facts. Uh, I believe that the journey of ADHD is a different one to a typical autism and typical ADHD, because again, these conditions have been known for a very long time. Um, Now people have started to recognize it. People are very much aware of it, and they have developed a kind of stereotype towards it. Like they're obviously seen very easily. Uh, the combined type of ADHD is seen easily. The inattentive still has got problems. Again, it can be easily confused with anxiety, depression. But autism, on the other hand, pure autism is seen very easily. Whereas ADHD it's a mixture of both, and it's intertwined, and its work the brain is kind of split into two. So it is difficult, and I also feel that even in the neurodivergent world, the condition ADHD is alienated, because the same the same the same thing about you're not ADHD and you're not autistic. It applies here, because the autistic will say, "No, you're not autistic," and ADHD will say, "No, you're not ADHD."
Yeah.
Because you're able to do certain things and you're able to switch things, but again, it has its toll on you. So the initial years are always difficult. Yeah, and I always tell people, because I work across the lifespan with children as well as older adults. The children and the teenager, they are the most difficult time for ADHD, because the brain is split into two and they are very confused and not able to express themselves. And it depends which one is stronger, because then there's a lot of masking that is going on. There are a lot of cultural nuances. Like for me, I'm a very atypical advocate of ADHD, because I'm brown. I come from a Muslim country. I come from northwest of Pakistan, which is a kind of a Pathan tribe, which is we are tribals, and it's the nature of the warrior. So when I start advocating, and people say, "Oh my God," like it's a completely atypical representation of how they, but this is what it is. Like the culture and the religion and the geographical terrain has so much impact, and they kind of help mask so many things. But at the same time, they teach you so many things because you're forced to do that because everybody is very much similar, but they want you to learn it. And in a way, the social skills training is given to us from the very onset of it without even realizing that we are given that training. You're forced to meet people, you're forced to sit with people. There's no other way because otherwise you will be taken as somebody who's not obedient, who's misbehaving, who's not keeping to the norms. So it has been an interesting journey, and it all kind of opened up to me when I came here to the UK because all of a sudden I was out of my very cushioned environment where there were a lot of people around me. They were helping me in so many things. Things were not so much apparent. And again, there's so many people who support you, whereas here you're completely independent and you have to be on your own. And slowly and gradually, it kind of transpired to me. And when I look at it, because I was always gravitated towards people who were neurodivergent, like autistic, ADHDers, and and it makes me wonder. And then when I start gravitating towards it, and again, when I stumble across this, so somebody offered it to me when I was still in transition of my training, and I was doing a locum consultant job while taking my exams. And somebody said, "Why don't you become a locum consultant and starting pioneering a service in Manchester?" It was an adult autism, ADHD, and personality disorder service, and I said, "Yeah, I would." My ADHD brain said, "Yeah, that's an opportunity. Just jump on it."
Yeah.
And when I started talking to people, I realized that like I can understand them better. It's coming very easy to me. It's not a task. It's not a chore. Whereas in other subspecialties, I had to learn a lot. But again, it's coming very natural, and I'm able to understand. Somehow, the algorithm is getting better and better and better for me to learn in this field. And then I start realizing that I'm autistic, and I realized that I've got ADHD. And I remember I did my one of my TEDx talks. It was in Seven Oaks, and it was about autism, the superhumans that live amongst us, and in which I talked about not the superpowers because again, I think it's a cliche. The
Yeah,
superpower,
that's the narrative, isn't it? Superpower,
exactly,
superpower. But I think
power
in
narrative.
itself, it puts pressure on people, doesn't it?
Yeah. But I took the people people who see it as deficiencies or shortcomings be people's superpowers because and then I started talking about it, and one of my friends, he was in Australia, he called me and said, because in there I did a disclosure, self-disclosure, and I said, "Oh, I saw self-disclosure there about autism." I said, "Yep." And he asked me, he said, "How long have you known that?" I said, "Probably a few years." um and and then I asked him, I said, "Why are you asking?" I said, "Because I knew you had autism the moment I met you." And that was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I said,
Yeah.
"Mm, eh, actually, it was 8 years ago, 9 years ago." I said, "Really?" So, yeah, you'd get into things, you'd get really preoccupied with things, you would know a lot of things, and your training was very demarcated. You took each year and said, "This is what I'm going to do in this year. This is what I'm going to do in this year. This is what I'm going to do in," and you actually made things happen, which where everybody is not able to do that. So I knew from the very onset that you were autistic. So so then ADHD came in, and then I started reading about AuDHD, and again it was my father. Uh, I think it was. I had seen him, I had observed him, and again we went through phases where I said, might have personality disorder, it might have bipolar or cyclothymia or social
Okay.
anxiety. And
Okay.
again, certain behaviors would not fit in that. He used to be the life and soul of a party. And all of a sudden, within 2, 3 hours, he would get up and sit in his room listening to music while all the guests were outside. I said, "What kind of behavior is that?"
Yeah.
And then it did not dawn on me till I started doing that. And then when I saw him, and then I saw the intertwining of autism and ADHD.
Mm.
And I think the 6 months before he passed away, that was the one that I observed him the most. And I clearly know that he had ADHD. But then when I started looking in, quite of magnified his life, and he had so much autism. He was attention to detail in so many different things, and he had his specialisms, and he has an interest, and he had his collections. And I remember the pens and the Ray-Ban glasses back in the 1980s when I used to be in Pakistan, in a very small town where hardly anybody would wear sunglasses, let alone Ray-Bans. And he used to have a massive collection of those.
Yeah.
Then he was a mechanical engineer. The collection of tools that he had, and the multiple kind of tools of the same thing he used to have. So that, and after his passing away, it became more apparent. And while I was grieving, I started writing, and I said, his story needs to be told because I'm starting to understand AuDHD better. And again, AuDHD, if you look at 2022, 2021, it was coming up slowly and gradually.
Slowly, yeah.
But it was not very apparent. And then when because I already was on a TEDx stage, I said, why don't I do a TEDx talk on it? And then I started developing the script. So I went through to at least 15 scripts that I worked with my TEDx coaches. And then I applied for the different TEDx platforms, at least 10 of them. And then I got selected in one of the misunderstood places, Vegas, of all the places, where I delivered When Order and Anarchy Live Together, Autism and ADHD Living in Symbiosis. And slowly and gradually, people started, when listening to it, it started to make sense. To me, it started to make sense. And here I am on that journey. And I think it ended up, I think, my father, which led to the TEDx talk, which led to that article in Guardian, which I was approached by one of the neurodivergent journalists who saw me on LinkedIn and saw my work, and then listened to the TEDx talk, and then he did the article. And I did not know it would be too big because he started with my story. And within 3 days, I got 2 book offers.
Wow.
Out of that. And then I jumped onto one because they were very serious and they had a time scale. And it's better for me if I work within the time limits, because otherwise, the ADHD brain can drift away, and a 3 month thing can be a forever thing for that person.
Yes.
So within 5 months, within months of doing that, I signed the contract, and within 5 months, I had the first draft ready for the book.
Great. Yeah, I actually wrote a book myself in July. I woke up one day having been asking, please show me, what's next. And literally I woke up with the download in my head, and being AuDHD, it was like, that's it. The whole of July was just writing, and by the end of July it was published, and that's it. When we get something like that we can really just, I can do this, and I need a shorter time scale, not a longer time scale. It can be really helpful, can't it? So I think I did read your book. Tell me that AuDHD name of the book, because I've got it downstairs. I read it.
Explaining AuDHD.
That's it. Yeah, it was brilliant. I loved it. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Like I've been, again, it's with us. You must be knowing. So the rejection sensitivity dysphoria is massive.
It's massive.
Both coming from autism and ADHD, and it can be really, really big. So when I'm reading the comments, so there's some really good comments, but then there are some comments about it being repetitive. And I'd been thinking about it, and a friend of mine who kind of introduced me to the U in Vienna, and he was reading my book, and he said, Khurram, I think when you were writing that book, you were in your autistic mind frame. So although there's repetition there, but repetition has a connection, so you connect things. But again, if an AuDHD read it, it makes sense. If an ADHD,
perfect sense to me. Perfect sense.
If an ADHD reads it, it's too much repetition for that person.
Yeah, no, it was perfect for me.
For an autistic person, that's the perfect book, because there's a lot of repetition and they like the repetition.
Exactly that.
Yeah, it makes sense to me now, because people complain about it being a bit repetitive in certain section, and I used to wonder, so what did I do? Like I can't find those sections. I cannot relate to it, but others, because they have got different algorithms. And then
that's it.
The explanation that he gave me was perfect. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So, what's coming up next for you? What are you about to do? What are you looking forward to do? Because obviously you've been
Yeah,
incredibly busy. You've
yeah,
been, really prolific in
yeah.
this field. What's next for you?
Well, I've been thinking about it because I'm not a person who would stay at a single place for more than a few years. Because once a job is done, I need to move on, and I need to thrive, and I need to kind of develop myself further. So, so there have been quite a few things. I think uh, I've been going again to UNVN on the next Monday. I have a talk about neurodiversity, and they have invited me again. So a friend of mine was saying, why don't you start a conversation? Because the way bipolar affective disorder diagnosis developed, it took years. Again, bipolar mania alone, mania, hypomania cannot explain bipolar, or depression alone cannot explain bipolar. But when they come together, that's what bipolar is. And he said, why don't you start this conversation with WHO? So I'm looking for a platform to work and to have those conversations with WHO about whether this be a spectrum or whether this be another condition or whether it be a separate diagnosis. So that's what my mindset is at this moment in time. But what I do is I get the ideas, I throw it in within my head, and I let it churn. And that churning goes on either for a few days, few months, for a few years, and then one day, one good day, as you said that one day you got up and you started writing the book and you finished it.
That's it. That's it.
And one day I will wake up and I will have the perfect plan as to how I'm going
Exactly
to
that.
go about it.
I call that because some people think, oh, procrastination. I call that you just explained incubation. So you've got that part of your brain that's just quietly incubating that idea away. And then when it's time to hatch, it will hatch. I never worry about things like that because it just works when it's supposed to work. And I don't have to focus on it until it's the right time for me to focus. So it's interesting what you said about, I know the current DSM-5 diagnostic statistic, for those that don't know what that is. It doesn't recognize AuDHD or ADHD, as you say it, as a separate condition. I mean, hopefully one day it will, because it is vast, as you say, it's vastly different. Having both, like you, they can work together and they can also really fight each other. And if I
Absolutely.
look back at my career, as you said, that 2 years, anything after 2 years, and I start going a bit stir crazy and think, oh no, I need a new challenge. And yet the autistic side of me, it wants stability, it wants calm, it wants routine. And yet my ADHD side is always chucking a spanner in the works and going, no, it's time to blow it all up. It's time to do something else, and so trying to
Yeah,
manage that, it is vastly different
absolutely.
than just being one or the other. But you also mentioned borderline personality, and my daughter was diagnosed originally with borderline, and then subsequently has been told, no, it's ADHD. And I think maybe that's been happening
Yeah,
for a long time,
yeah.
in that, people have maybe been misdiagnosed or taken down the mental health route when actually it could well be the neurodivergence instead. What do you think?
I think it's there has been a lot of misdiagnosis. There's no doubt about it. And again, when I look at my transitions over a period of time, I remember so many times that I might have missed ADHD very easily. And again, it's a learning curve. But again, the learning curve nowadays, especially with this advent of the new terminology ADHD, and with this knowing about the intertwining nature of autism and ADHD, there should be more training given to psychiatrists. And unfortunately, uh, people are in their silos. Either they're dealing with autism side of things, or they're dealing with ADHD side of things. There are hardly any people who are specialists in both areas. And if there are, they are kind of limited to either child or adult. In order to understand the whole journey, you have to be an expert in right from the time of the childhood till
Yes.
till adulthood. Otherwise, you will miss so many different things. the developmental stages. So that's one thing, misdiagnosis, mismanagement. But at the same time, like trauma exists and trauma exacerbate, and trauma
It
can
does.
can transform personality. So UPD can coexist with
Yeah, yeah,
ADHD.
yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely, 100%.
But
Yeah,
these are complex presentation, and these are kind of which require, even for the personality disorders, like there has to be a holistic assessment done. Like however, nowadays the personality disorder assessment like spans over literally an hour in a clinic room, assessment room, where they kind of diagnose people with different kind of condition. It has to be very similar route to a neurodevelopmental assessment, where it needs to be collaborative history. It needs to be a
exactly.
360 perspective. Yes, you cannot, like, there is there's a time span. For example, before 18 years of age, you cannot diagnose people with personality disorders
Right.
because of the how the brain is working and how the brain is transforming and branching out and condensing itself. And again, after 18, you're diagnosed. But again, these narratives need to be looked into more because things have changed. The research about brain, about development, because at one stage they used to say that after 25 the brain stops growing. Well, that's
Yeah, I know. We used to think that, didn't we? It's like it's just
not,
so not true.
not
It's
true.
so not true.
Yeah, like the pace of it changes because
Yeah.
the neuroplasticity
Neuroplasticity,
yeah,
neurogenesis, absolutely.
absolutely it continues, but at a slow pace after a
Yes,
certain age, but it does. and
it
and
does.
and that's what the premise is. Otherwise, all the therapies, CBT, psychotherapy, social skills training, coaching, whatever kind of coaching it is, it would not be helpful if our brain was not neuroplastic.
That's
There was
exactly
no
right.
neurogenesis.
Yeah, no,
So,
absolutely.
so these narratives need to be looked into, and the training processes needs to be more stringent, where things are
Yes.
taught and things are part of curriculum and things are more observed and seen by the psychiatrists or the mental health teams.
So maybe that's something you could go into is writing and delivering or training the people who are going to be training the new up and coming psychiatrists so that they do know about and they are able to work not just in these silos because I think it's going to become more and more necessary as more and more people are diagnosed with both that,
Absolutely.
it's going to be a necessary thing.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yep. And I do that. Like again, where I'm working, we do master classes for all the mental health teams, not just for the medics, just for everybody who's part of the mental health force, so that they understand what ADHD is. Unfortunately, like again, our ADHD team is not an autism team, but again, people who I work with very closely, I teach them about autism and how
Great.
intertwines. I go out into the communities to talk about the neurodevelopmental condition, because without training, eyes can't see what the mind does not know.
That's
So
exactly right.
exactly, like
100%.
you have to sow the seed and you have to see the results of it, because a lot of the time people do not even need a diagnosis; they need an understanding of things. Why not to tackle it at an early stages, an early intervention where they do not require social skills training. They just need an understanding, and developing the insight will help them massively as compared to going.
We see that in the coaching that we do, in that one of the main things that people say in the first session is, oh my goodness, you actually understand. And so that they don't have to mask in the session, they can just be themselves. They can feel really seen and heard. And even just that connection of it's okay. I understand where you're coming from. I know what that might feel like. For me, this is a similar type of situation. Honestly, just that being heard and understood, massive change in itself right there and then. So fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing your career continue. You are a shining light in this field, and keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing brilliantly, sharing the message, the wisdom, the knowledge, around everything to do with AuDHD, and in all the clinical work that you do, it will make a difference. You know, if I'd have had somebody like you when I was a child going, "It's okay, you know, we know who you are, we know what this is about," what a difference that might have made to my own life, 100%. And to many others, to many others. So thank you so much for coming on today. I know your schedule is horrific at the moment, even though it's really exciting. But yeah, I just want to say thank you, and please keep doing you, because it's brilliant.
Thank you very much, Janice. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.